There is a quiet fear that lives in the back of the mind of almost every senior over 60. The fear that the moments of forgetfulness, the name you couldn't recall, the appointment you forgot, the word that wouldn't come, might mean something more than just getting older. And the terrifying truth is that for millions of seniors, those moments are meaningful. They are early signals. Signals that the brain is changing in ways that, if caught now, can still be slowed, managed, and in some cases, significantly delayed. But most people miss them. They dismiss them. They explain them away. And by the time a diagnosis arrives, years of critical intervention time have already been lost. By the end of this video, you will know the 5 early signs of dementia that seniors most commonly overlook, including one that researchers at Washington University identified in a groundbreaking study published in Nature Medicine just weeks ago in February 2026. You will understand exactly what makes these signs different from normal aging, and you will know what to do the moment you recognize any of them. So stay with me, because the next 10 minutes could be among the most important you spend this year. Let's begin with a number that puts the urgency of this conversation in perspective. According to the World Health Organization, over 57 million people worldwide are currently living with dementia, and nearly 10 million new cases are diagnosed every year. Alzheimer's disease alone accounts for 60 to 70% of all dementia cases, making it by far the most common form. According to the National Institute on Aging, symptoms of late-onset Alzheimer's, the kind that affects the vast majority of seniors, typically first appear in the mid-60s or later. And here is the piece of information that changes everything about how we should be thinking about early signs. Research consistently shows that the brain changes associated with Alzheimer's, the formation of amyloid plaques and tau tangles that slowly destroy neuronal connections, begin a decade or more before any memory or thinking problems become noticeable. A decade. That means that for many seniors who will eventually develop dementia, the biological process is already underway, silently, invisibly, long before the first obvious symptom appears. This is both sobering and empowering. Sobering because it means the clock starts earlier than most people realize. Empowering because it means that recognizing the earliest signals gives you a real, meaningful window to act. So what are those signals? What does early dementia actually look like? Not in the textbook, but in real life, in daily moments, in the kind of changes that are easy to dismiss as nothing. Let's go through all 5. And I want you to pay close attention to the ones that surprise you most. Those are the ones that matter. The first early sign, and the one most commonly dismissed as normal aging, is short-term memory loss that goes beyond ordinary forgetfulness. Now, I want to be very precise here, because the distinction between normal forgetfulness and early dementia memory changes is critically important, and it is a distinction most people get completely wrong. Normal aging forgetfulness looks like this. You walk into a room and forge, call someone's name, but remember it a few hours later. You misplace your keys occasionally. These are common and do not indicate dementia. Early dementia memory loss looks different. Yet why you went there? You temporarily can't rhyme. It is persistent, progressive, and specifically targets recent events. According to Cleveland Clinic neurologists, people in the early stages of dementia often retain vivid, detailed memories from decades ago with remarkable clarity, while being completely unable to remember what they had for breakfast, what they did yesterday, or a conversation that happened that same morning. It is not the inability to recall in general. It is a specific, consistent failure to form and retain new short-term memories. When a senior asks the same question multiple times in a single conversation, not because they weren't listening, but because the answer genuinely did not register and be retained, that is a meaningful signal that deserves professional evaluation, not reassurance. The second early sign is difficulty completing familiar tasks, and this one is particularly heartbreaking to witness because it involves the erosion of abilities that a person has performed automatically for decades. According to the Alzheimer's Society and the National Institute on Aging, one of the earliest functional signs of dementia is when activities that were once completely routine, cooking a familiar recipe, managing monthly bills, operating a device that has been used for years, will suddenly become confusing, overwhelming, or impossible to complete without assistance. A senior who has managed their own finances for 30 years, but suddenly cannot balance their checkbook or becomes confused by a credit card statement, is showing a warning sign that goes beyond normal aging. A person who has cooked the same meals for decades, but begins leaving out steps, burning things consistently, or forgetting that the stove is on, is demonstrating a meaningful cognitive change. These are not signs of laziness or distraction. They are signs that the brain's executive function, its ability to plan, sequence, and execute multi-step tasks, is beginning to deteriorate, and they deserve to be taken seriously. Are you still with me? Because the third early sign is one that the Alzheimer's Association specifically flags as one of the most under-recognized warning signals, and it has nothing to do with memory. It is changes in mood, personality, and social behavior. Research from both the Alzheimer's Society and Cleveland Clinic confirms that mood and behavioral changes are among the earliest manifestations of dementia, appearing sometimes before significant memory problems develop. What does this look like in practice? A senior who was previously outgoing, social, and engaged in hobbies begins withdrawing from friends and family. Someone who was characteristically even-tempered becomes unusually irritable, anxious, or easily frustrated. A person who previously found pleasure and meaning in activities they have loved for years, gardening, reading, but when they appear alongside any other cognitive changes, they are a critical early signal that the brain is being affected. The fourth early sign is getting lost or confused in familiar places. And this symptom is particularly alarming because it represents the failure of a type of memory that most people take completely for granted. Spatial orientation, the ability to navigate familiar environments, recognize routes you have traveled hundreds of times, and understand your position in physical space, is one of the cognitive functions that dementia begins to erode in its early stages. According to the National Institute on Aging, a common early warning sign of dementia is when a senior becomes disoriented in a neighborhood they have lived in for years, loses their way driving a familiar route, or becomes confused about which direction to turn to get from one room to another in their own home. This goes far beyond occasional distraction or being briefly uncertain about directions. It is a consistent pattern of spatial disorientation in environments that should feel completely familiar. When a senior returns from a walk and cannot find their way back to their front door in their own neighborhood, or drives to the grocery store they have visited for 20 years and cannot remember the route home. These are not moments of normal aging. These are early dementia warning signs that require immediate medical evaluation. And the fifth early sign, the one that a remarkable new study in February 2026 sheds extraordinary new light on, is difficulty with language, word finding, and following conversations. According to the Alzheimer's Society and the NIA, one of the earliest and most consistent early signs of dementia is a growing struggle to find the right words in conversation. Not occasionally, as everyone experiences, but consistently and progressively. Sentences trail off. People substitute vague words like thing or that for specific nouns they cannot retrieve. Following a complex conversation becomes effortful and exhausting in a way it never used to be. Reading comprehension begins to decline. Writing becomes more difficult. This language deterioration often begins subtly enough that the senior themselves may not notice it clearly, but the people around them do. And they typically describe it as the person seeming to struggle to express themselves in a way that feels new and out of character. And now, that groundbreaking February 2026 study, published in Nature Medicine by researchers at Washington University, adds a profound new dimension to this. Scientists found that by measuring a protein called p-tau217 in a simple blood test, they can predict when Alzheimer's symptoms are likely to begin within roughly 3 to 4 years, even before any noticeable symptoms appear. This means that the era of detecting dementia's biological changes before they visibly manifest is genuinely arriving. The implication for seniors is clear and urgent. If you or someone you love is showing early language and communication changes, the time to see a neurologist is now, not later. So what do you do with all of this? The most important thing, and I cannot say this with enough emphasis, is to act on early signs immediately rather than waiting to see if they get worse. The Alzheimer's Association is unambiguous on this point. Early diagnosis is not about receiving bad news earlier. It is about accessing intervention, support, and treatment at the point where those things have the greatest possible impact. Current medications for Alzheimer's, lifestyle interventions, including aerobic exercise and cognitive engagement, blood pressure and blood sugar management, and the emerging class of disease. Modifying therapies are all most effective when begun at the earliest possible stage. Waiting, hoping that the signs will resolve on their own, telling yourself it's just aging, is the choice that costs people the most precious time they have. If you or someone you love over 60 is showing any of the 5 signs we've discussed today, persistent short-term memory loss, difficulty with familiar tasks, personality and mood changes, getting lost in familiar places, or language and word-finding struggles, please make an appointment with a doctor this week. Not eventually, this week. Have you noticed any of these signs in yourself or someone you love? Drop a comment below. Your experience and your questions matter, and your story might be exactly what another family needs to see to finally take action. Share this video with everyone over 60 in your life, because the window to protect the brain is real, and it is open right now. Subscribe if you haven't already, because every single week we bring you the most important evidence-based health information for seniors who refuse to accept that what's coming is inevitable. This video is for educational and informational purposes only. It is not intended as medical advice. Always consult your doctor or qualified healthcare professional if you have concerns about cognitive health